This is the 18th season of Bass Talk Live. With your host, Matt Pangrath. BTL is brought to you by Lorraine's, Bass Cat Boats, AFCO, Strike King Lures, Sunline, Big Bite Baits, Spro, X-Zone Lures, Gamakatsu, The Bass Tank, Denali Rods, and Pro Guide Batteries.
BTL, coming at you!
Good morning. Welcome to BTL Bass Talk Live, where we are going to talk about bass fishing. Live show this morning, April 19th. It's a Tuesday. Shockingly, it's cold and windy in Oklahoma, as it always is. I'm starting to get jacked up for these shows. These are shows that I really like to do. We got all the Ghost in the Machine worked out for the audio-wise, but we started doing this at the beginning of the year, me and Bradley Hallman, fellow Oklahoma angler, much more accomplished than me, 2 tour wins and a Costa win, over $1 million under his belt. He's been doing it a long time. But what we did was we got game footage from the Opens. Of course, Brad and I are fishing all 9 of the Bassmaster Opens in an attempt to qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. And we kind of went over some game footage in that first one. That first one was me. I had a tungsten that hit me in the face and boat flipped to 7, and Brad was throwing a Ned rig, and we started analyzing each other's game footage, and we had like a 2-hour show. He was actually in studio for that, but the feedback from that was amazing, and actually learned a lot from that show. So he said, man, let's do that for all of the Opens, not realizing that we had 3 basically back to back starting in Tennessee, and then we just got back from Virginia, and now we're headed to Mississippi. But I got Brad in the studio. He got his clips dialed in for the James River. I got my clips dialed in for the James River. And Brad is currently getting his 6-year-old on the school bus. He's all dialed in. As soon as his 6-year-old is on the school bus, he will be in, and we will go over everything that went down at the James River in the last Bassmaster Open in our quest to qualify for the Bassmaster Elite Series. Talked a little bit about what went down in yesterday's show, but that was primarily focused on Jason Christie, talking a little bit about the mental game yesterday. If you haven't gone back and watched that show, I'm very intrigued on the mental aspect of fishing and how confidence, something that is, you can't even see it. Like, it just exists. It's like I don't even know how to describe like what confidence is, but Christie was talking about how, you know, he doesn't care if there's another guy fishing the bank. If someone just fished it, when he rolls up, he doesn't care what everyone else is doing. He has that inner confidence right now. He's fishing really well. And that's kind of weird to see, like, how that translates to catching fish. Because the fish doesn't know whether you're male or female or young or old or confident or unconfident. But you see a lot of guys who have that inner confidence. They talk about it. We've done BTL for 15 years now, and a lot of the guys who win, I mean, you never have a guy on who wins that I remember that was like, man, I second-guessed my decisions and was unconfident. And it's always guys who just have a mental, I don't know. I don't know how the mental aspect translates to the fish, but it somehow does. There's a number of guys who seem to be able to keep it. We've talked about the 6 or 7 year run that Van Dam went on. We've seen what Jordan Lee's done. Jacob Wheeler's had it for a long time now. Greg Hackney's gone through stretches of it. Christie has it right now. Denny Brower had it back in the day. We've talked. We had a Ken Duke on last month. We need to get Ken Duke back on from Fishing Tackle Retailer to talk about it. But Ken Duke, talked about the run that Denny Brower has been on before. John Sokup, who was also on the show, he's got it going on right now. But it's really cool to be around those guys because they make it simple and they make it seem easy, and they go out and they catch fish, which is what I mean, why everyone listens to the show, watches it. Not only is it entertaining, but you're also trying to kind of glean information you're trying to gain an edge, to get better at what you're doing. So that's something I'll talk to Brad about. There's some like old school guys who don't really believe in it. There's some young guys that are all about it. Like I said, we had Matt Steffen on who talked about working with a mental coach and how much that helped him in his game. I'll tell you a guy who's got it going on right now who most likely will continue that role is Michael Neal. And a very timely angler to talk about. He is currently leading the MLF Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit Angler of the Year right now with 391 points through 2 tournaments. He's got $116,000 just on the pro circuit side. But those guys kick off in 2 days for the 3rd stop of the season on Pickwick Lake. And Pickwick's fishing fairly tough right now from the guys that I've talked to, from what I've seen. But after that, they will be halfway through, and it's hard to believe halfway through already, but they will be halfway through the season over there on the pro circuit. So Pickwick coming up, also the NPFL, their 2nd stop of the season on Lake Hartwell. See if a number of guys can keep their streak going over there. We'll be very interested to see. Hopefully they will be able to get 3 full days of competition over there on Hartwell, whether it will be a herring spawn deal or a bass spawn deal. So that's the action that you have going on this week, and then the Open next week, and then the Elite Series kicks back up, and then the Major League Fishing BPT kicks back up. So I just saw Brad get into the studio. It is the James River Breakdown. I've gone through all of the numbers. I've gone through a lot of crazy numbers too of the 89 anglers who have fished all 3 of the 9 Opens. And before I take a break and we bring Brad in, just to kind of clarify how this goes down, if you're listening to this, you obviously follow the Elite Series, you know what the BPT is, but through the Bassmaster Opens, there's 4 ways that you can make the Bassmaster Elite Series. There's 94 on the Elite Series this year, and that is to finish in the top 3 in one of the 3 divisions of the Opens. There's 200 points available. There's 225 to 230 anglers in each of the divisions. So over the 3 events, you can finish in the top 3, either in the Northern, the Southern, or the Central division, and just fish those 3 tournaments. So you can technically make the Elite Series by fishing just 6 days. Or you can fish all 9, which is the punishment that Brad and I put ourselves through, along with at least 89 other anglers right now, and then finish in the top 3 overall in those points. So 3, 6, 9, 12 anglers will move on to the Elite Series from the 2022 Bassmaster Opens. And new this year is if you double qualify, like if an angler who fishes all of them finishes in the top 3 in one of the 3 divisions, it will go down the overall list. So if you look at the last 2 years, there's typically 1 or 2 anglers. So most likely it will go down to 4 or 5 qualifying. And when we kind of get into some of the numbers that I've gone over and some of the game footage that Hallman and I have from this event, you'll kind of see why those numbers make sense. So we're going to start out. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with Bradley Hallman, and we will break down the 3rd Bassmaster Open of the year, the first Northern Bassmaster Open that took place this past week, won by Kenta Kimura with 65 pounds. Absolutely slugged him on the final day there. Actually, all 3 days, about a 21.5-pound average on the James River. But it's BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back after this.
Bigger and better. The Lowrance Ultimate Fishing System upgrade now offers more. A new $200 rebate on active target live sonar, and bigger savings with up to $1,200 cash back. Pick fish finding tools to fit the way you fish. From high-performance sonar and ultra-quiet ghost trolling motor to navigation and networking tools that bring it all together. Find more, see more, catch more.
The new Puma STS has been redesigned from the ground up. With the angler, design, function, and performance in mind, nothing on this new offering was compromised, and the only thing carried over from the previous version is the name. Based on the Soft Touch series hull that started with the flagship Jaguar, this new model is nimble and performs incredibly well at all speeds with either a 250 or 300 horsepower engine. Featuring a new 96-inch wide-body footprint, this hull measures out at 20 foot 7 inches in length. Industry-leading design coupled with tournament-winning performance. The Puma STS from Basscat. Feel the rush.
Welcome back to BTL on a Tuesday. We're talking all things James River today. Kind of a new feature that Brad and I are doing where we break down each other's game footage from the most recent Open. And we're going to get into some cool stuff today because I actually had some stuff where I believe that I caught some fish based on watching my video from last year. What's up, Brad?
What do you say, Bubba? How you doing?
You hanging in there?
As much as possible.
We're halfway through this crazy month of week on, week off, week on, week off, week on. We're dead nuts in the middle of it. And I know you've got 4 kids at home. It was Easter weekend this past weekend. You've got a number of other business ventures on your plate as well. So is this one of the most hectic month-long stretches that you can remember in recent history as far as when it comes to fishing and life?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, recent anyway. I definitely remember some 4 or 5 back-to-backs years ago, but as of recently, yeah, it's been pretty hectic. And it's kind of been, like that James River dude was a drive. You left the night after weigh-in, and I left the next morning. And, dude, that's a long ways. I think that was 18, 19 hours of drive time back to Oklahoma. I got back exactly at noon as everybody was getting out of church and just in time for Easter dinner with the family. So I wanted to make that, did everything I could to make that happen. I think I got up at Memphis at like 5:30 in the morning to hit the road at 6, or another 6 hours of drive just to get home on Sunday. But yeah, it's been wild.
Wow. I did a little we do a little deal with Mercer called the Cole, and one of the last videos that we did was back-to-back tournaments, good or bad, and they're talking mainly about the Elite Series. And I think we both agreed that one a month would be ideal for the Elite Series, kind of highlight all of the abilities from spring all the way through fall. But having done this week on, week off, week on, week off, week on, week off in the Opens now, I would have almost rather just had 3 weeks in a row of the Opens and just been like, all right, this is my life for the next 3 weeks and save a little of the travel money and get it out of the way, because it's kind of hard to chop it up, come home for 3 or 4 days and then get back on the road. I know a number of guys are just going from event to event and practicing for an extra week in between, but it just feels choppy to me right now. Life feels choppy.
I don't know. I kind of like the week in between. If they were close together, like if we were making a California swing or something like that, then I don't mind the back-to-backs. But I don't mind the week in between.
All right. Neither of us had a stellar James River performance. I think we both, I don't want to speak for you, but I think we both had higher expectations. We did finish in the top 100. I believe you finished, 96th, and I finished 78th. So out of 230 anglers, not total disasters, but nowhere near where we need to be to make up ground. Your overall thoughts on, I think you had, right around 24 pounds, 12 pounds a day. On the James. So just before we get into the footage, your overall thoughts on the James River.
It was the same for me as it was last year. Last year I fished in the Chickahominy. This year I focused primarily on the James. The thing that was totally the same was, dude, it was the best practice I'd had all year. And this year was no different, probably better than my practice last year. It was really, really, really good. I practiced for 4 full days, and of the 4 full days, I think 17 pounds was the smallest bag that I had. I never crossed over 20, but it was between 17 and 19. I had a couple of days that I think I could have pushed the 19-pound mark if we'd have laid them on the scale. I was primarily early in practice focusing more on spawners, which is plastics and jigs, and then by the last 2 days, I was square bill cranking and chatterbaiting. And it just worried me. Like, historically, really good practices turn into really bad tournaments. And obviously it scared me for a reason. It happened in this one too. I thought I could prevent it, dude, because I know what causes it. It's being locked into certain areas, doing certain things, and then you try to repeat what you have seen before. And I had enough water and enough places that I thought that I could flow freely. And change freely. I had enough options of different styles of fishing. But when it was all said and done, it was Ratville, and I never caught a fish over 3.5 pounds. I mean, I never saw one of those 4 or 5 pounders. And during the practice of the event, going through and seeing a lot of the fish, I knew that, like, and you probably noticed this too, there's a lot of fish in that 2 pound or lower range, right? Like 14 inches that weigh a pound and a half, 2 pounds.
Like lots.
Millions. And you don't see a lot of 3 pounders. Like, you really don't. It's either those little ones or it's a 5. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of in between, like that class.
Solid fish, good fish, where you catch it where you're like, it's not a giant, but I'll sure as heck take it.
Right, like a 3.5 pounder. Like, we would all take 5 of those suckers, but you weren't going to catch 5 of them. That was not going to, is what was going to happen. You had to have that 4 to 5, 6 pounder kicker fish in your bag, and really good if you had 2 of them, and awesome if you could catch 3 of them. And that's really how this thing was going to go down. And dude, I had 1 bite. I've got it in this clip. We'll watch it, but I only had 1 bite over 4 pounds in 2 days of the tournament. And then by the second day of the tournament, I completely changed and was like, all right, I'm going to slow down some more, go back to really finessing more for the spawners, lighter weight, still Texas rigging and stuff, but just going slower. And started the day off, first fish was a 3.5 pounder. And I thought, well, this is going to work. Like, I'm going to catch a lot of fish today. I just got to go through them. Yeah, by noon, I had to scrap that too because it wasn't working. So I never really put my finger on the pulse. I definitely fished around a lot of guys that did well in this event, multiple guys that made top 10s, and I just wasn't the lucky one this week, I guess. I don't know. It was a very frustrating event, I'm sure, just like it was for you. Caught a lot of fish, just never got on the right size.
It wasn't, and that's kind of the story for mine. However, I did go back fish history, stayed in the same area. I remember last year you spent a lot of time in the Chickahominy. I spent 5 days in it last year, and I went back and I learned the 5 mile stretch where I caught them last year even better this year, and thought the same thing would go down. I saw a couple big ones each day of practice, shook what I felt like were a couple big ones off, and then the last day of practice pulled one up, 7-8 pounder up, and was like, all right, well, that's all I needed to see. And then, shook 30 or 40 off, and then said, all right, I'm going to burn a couple just to see if they're still rats. Pitched the very first tree I came to, pitched to it, caught a 1.25 pounds, pitched right back in and caught a 4 pounder, and was like, all right, I'm doing the same thing. I'm making the run. I'm doing the same thing I did. I felt like low end 12 to 13 a day, high end 17 to 21 if things got really Western, possibility for more. Dink and dunk, drop shot, wacky worm, spinning rod, and we'll go into kind of what I did to up the odds for some fish that I lost last year that I didn't lose this year. But I was really surprised. We did not room together in this one. I stayed with a BTL listener who actually had a house right by the Chickahominy, and you guys stayed in a house that you weren't allowed to do heroin in based on the you got the check-in sheet that said absolutely no heroin in the house. Okay, we could. Or exotic dancers or prostitution.
Yeah.
Which meant at some point there was heroin and prostitution going on in that VRBO. But anyway, what made you decide not to even go into the Chickahominy this year, Brad? That shocked me.
Well, if you remember back to last year, the second day I pulled the plug on everything and just went to the James blind. And what I saw there was the watercolor that suits my style more. It's more stained, Chickahominy tends to be a little clearer, and there's big fish throughout that system. I know that they stock those F1 Florida strain heavily in the Chick, but they've been doing that now for many, many years, and those fish all get hauled out of there, taken back up to where we're weighing in. So they redistribute throughout that river. There's big fish throughout that river. You don't have to just be in the Chick to catch a 20+ pound bag. And I just felt more comfortable in the staying. And so I'd limited myself last year in the Chickahominy, and I just refused to do it this time. It wasn't that I wasn't going to go in there at all and practice. I had full intentions of going, but practice on the James just was so lucrative. It got to the point where there just wasn't time nor a need to go to the Chick.
All right, well, let's get to your highlight videos here, and there will be no audio on the video, which will allow you to remain crisp and clear for your audio. So kind of walk us through what we're seeing here. But this is Brad's highlights, and we'll talk. I can already tell just by looking at it that I did not come across anything that even remotely resembled where you started the morning.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. So what are we looking at there? Is that like kind of where you started? But it looks like a flat with stumps on it instead of small isolated targets. Is that more of a current-driven area there? Or?
Yeah, this is a popular area on the lake. It's a big spawning flat bay at the mouth of a creek, and this is one of the areas that there was quite a few fish caught. But what's happening right now is it's low tide, and so all that water that you see back behind you there is that flat, and it pulls all those fish back to the ditch leading out of there, which these stumps sit in the mouth of that ditch. So
where I'm circling here, you're talking about these are where the fish on high tide.
No, back to the right. No, all the way back to the woods. All the way back to the woods.
Oh,
to
back
your right.
in there.
No, to your right.
Back in there. Okay, so this is a giant flat, and on high tide, these fish are back here roaming. On low tide, what's the tide swing, like 3 foot?
Yeah, probably about that.
On low tide, they come out and they set up on all of this isolated. Are those cypress knees?
Yeah, those are just old cypress trees.
Moving bait.
Yeah, I believe I'm throwing a Little John right here. I switched back between the Little John and the square bill quite a bit just to keep them honest. Really couldn't tell the difference that I got bit on one better than the other. This fish choked it right off the bat this morning, just like you want them. It's a good solid, one of those 2 3/4 pounders that we were talking about that you don't see very many of, that could really help finish out the bottom of your bag if you could catch 3 of those overs. But this fish is bleeding like, dude, it's terrible. So I do the old Mountain Dew trick. There's blood everywhere. It looks like I've killed a pig in the boat. But
okay,
that fish
explain the Mountain Dew trick again.
I don't know. It's the sugar. Guys talk about Cokes and stuff through the years that Coke worked. I started using Mountain Dew because that's just usually what's in my boat. When you've got a fish that's stuck really bad and bleeding heavily like that, sometimes if you pour a little Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew, I don't know if it's the acid or if it's the sugar, but it does up the odds. So I poured about a half a bottle of Mountain Dew down his throat, and he was all jacked up on Mountain Dew and made it to weigh-in alive.
Very nice. So that was a good start.
Yeah, it was. That was a good start. It was early in the morning. It was about par for the course. And like I say, that was one that's kind of hard to come by.
All right. Next clip, it looks like it's a little bit later in the day. And now this looks like the Holy Land here. These are massive, massive cypress trees. And is this high tide or no? It looks like it's still kind of low tide.
Still low
here.
And it's coming back in.
So this is a great example then if you see in here. So on high tide, look at the dark trees over here on the left-hand side. That's pretty much where the water level will be on high tide, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of this stuff is going to be underwater at high tide. Gives them a lot more areas to kind of sneak in, to hide, to ambush with the current. So were you intentionally on these big trees with these giant knees at low tide so you could pull the fish off and target them more easily, or just so happened?
So what was going on while we were there was definitely 110% was all about the spawn. And I liked it at low tide with the crankbaits because I felt like the crankbait was just better at low tide because I could cover more water than you could with a wacky rig, and 2, it would hit the bed, right? And they're spawning around these knees. And, if you go back and think about some of the tournaments that have been won, like everybody's coming by here and throwing a drop shot and a wacky worm and everything else. And the crankbait just comes by, that Little John just deflects off the cypress trees and it's coming so fast. She's got to make a choice. I'm either smacking it or I'm not, and I think that a lot of times at low tide, it allowed you to put the bait right in their face and they ate it. So the majority of my quality 4.5 to 6 pound bites in practice were coming on that crankbait around low tide. So I really wanted to cover a lot of water early in the morning around these spawning areas.
What were you throwing that little crankbait on? Because, obviously you couldn't throw it on like light stuff or a crankbait rod, could you? Because you had to get those things away from the cypress.
Right. I didn't light line anything this week. That was, I believe I threw the Little John and the square bill both on 16 pound sunline. Both of them.
You're slow fishing this one though.
I probably had a couple
Texas
of
rig.
Yeah, if sometimes I'd feel them swat that crankbait and
Jeez,
then
you laid the lumber to that one.
come back in there with that. Yeah, I threw that on 20.
Ooh, that's a good one.
There wasn't anything great that day. It may have been another one of those. I had a couple of 2.5. I had three. I weighed in three fish that day that were around the 2 3/4 range.
So you think those fish, that fish there was on a bed right there?
Yeah, I
Or do you
remember.
think
I,
it was
I had,
just like-
I had thrown a square bill by it, 100% on the bed. I had thrown a square bill by it, and she smacked it, didn't get it, and I stopped and picked up, and I flipped in that the fighting frog.
Mm-hmm.
The fighting frog is really, really good on that river.
So here's my question, and I kind of ran into this too. So you have a big cypress out here that I'm circling that's like kind of out from the rest of them. That's going to have the most current on it during the tide. That's like the most obvious target, right? Would you consider that what you would call a like a condo on Grand Lake, a willow that's out different from the rest of them?
Absolutely.
But would you then go back and fish like this little horseshoe and all these little things in 1.5 2 foot of water, or would you just target the high percentage areas like you caught that fish off of? Because I struggled on how far back to go.
Okay, so what was happening, and there's no doubt about this either, and I felt like this going into the tournament. The bigger bites were on the bigger females were spawning on the trees that were further out. The ones that were all the way up on the bank had a lot of males on them, but you didn't catch as many females, and you didn't see those 5 and 6 pounders. They tended to be on those isolated, further out trees that were deeper. I don't know if you noticed in practice, but how the fish tended to be on those really steep banks more so than way up on the flats. Did you notice that? Just going
Could not catch them on the steep banks this time, Brad. You know my deal last year was all about the steep banks. I never had a bite on a steep bank.
Well,
I went flat on the second day in the Chickahominy and caught my better ones. Like I said, we did like opposite stuff.
Yeah. So there was multiple big fish caught in this area. One of the guys I'm sitting here looking at right now that made the top 10, he caught 2 or 3 of his big ones here the first morning.
That was a short strike right there.
Yeah, she hit it off that cypress knee right by the boat. This is that.
So you're cranking this one.
Yeah, this is a 4.5 pounder. And she doesn't make it in. But dude, she's hooked on top of the head, and I know it right here. I hit my thumb, bar, and had just let her go. I wasn't even using the drag. I was just using my thumb. I'm playing her really, really slow and easy. I hit my thumb bar again right there and let her go. She goes back up underneath the boat, and I can see the crankbaits on top of her head. She's not hooked inside the mouth at all. Like she's just smacked at it as the crankbait was coming by.
Ooh.
And then right there, it just pops loose at the last second when I was just about to grab her.
So, I mean, in hindsight, is there anything you could have done differently on that?
I mean,
let's watch the hooks.
Trout fish a little more, but I don't know. It's just unlucky.
It came by, loaded up good, and just had it on the top. So the thumb bar thing, so some guys do that, some guys don't. So what you're saying is you're pushing your thumb bar and then free spooling it with your thumb, so because you know the fish isn't hooked good, so you can control how much tension is on that fish instead of letting it pull the hooks.
Correct.
Would you have done that if you'd seen that it had it choked?
Yes. If she was been that close and short striked it on 16-pound test line, yes. Yeah.
And you took your time.
There's no need to play with the drag system. I mean, it's not that they don't work, but your thumb's better. And it's so easy to gauge and disengage and engage, back and forth anytime they make a run.
And it doesn't look like a super stiff rod, so I mean, you're getting some. Yeah, that's just bad luck. That's literally all that comes down to, Brad.
Yeah.
Because that fish, instead of going away from you right there and swimming hard like a salmon, if it turns over and rolls over, you just scoop it.
Right. If I had to go with again, knew what would happen, I probably would have stayed on the front deck just a little bit longer, and but she could have come off then too. Who knows?
Yeah. So now it looks like you've moved to some flatter stuff.
Yeah, but it's really not. The river channel, this is on a creek channel bend, and it's on the outside of the bend. So the deep water where my boat's sitting is right there. My boat's sitting in 7 or 8 right here.
Okay, so all these knees and stuff are in
2
to 3.
Yeah.
It's a little, yeah, it's a little muddy up there. Still slinging the square bill. Boy, that was instantaneous. Watch this. There's the cast. Right in, but watch the cast. 1, 2, fish on.
Mm-hmm.
So that fish probably would have eaten anything that got thrown up there. You think, or you think you were getting more of a reaction bite?
They're just spawners. I mean, you could catch them on a lot of different things. I just felt like that with the crankbait that I could get more bites and throughout the day to cover more water. And I also felt like, like I said, that I could get a reaction bite out of the bigger fish.
I never saw any of that hay stuff behind, so you must be in the back of it, or not the back, but you must have been in a pocket or a bay.
Yeah, I caught a big one. I caught a big one down this stretch in practice.
So, like on that exact spot, or
one of those two trees there behind me there, where you saw the caller standing. There's quite a few trees there too.
So, like, do you think that fish was still there? You just didn't put it in the right spot, or how do you think that works? Because I did that multiple times. Like, I knew where I'd had a big bite in practice. I felt like it was a spawning fish. I felt like there was a male with it. And, I would power pull down and spend 10 or 15 minutes on it. Every 6 inches, change between a wacky, a drop shot, and a BFE, and just could not get it to bite before. But in practice, it would be a don't on the first one. I wouldn't set the hook on it. Mm-hmm. And it just wasn't there. And I was there at the same tide, and that kind of frustrated me. Because it happened 4 or 5 different times where I knew there had been a big one there less than 24 hours before.
I don't know. I got into my area. This area was further on down the river, and I didn't get in here until probably 10, 11 o'clock. So it'd been worked over pretty hard by the time I got there. So I wasn't really concerned about exactly where I'd gotten bit because I knew there was a chance that someone else had already caught the fish. This is off the main river coming back at the end of the day, and I started running stuff that not everybody was running, just little bitty places that I thought looked fishy.
Throwing a fighting frog.
Yep, back to flipping the fighting frog. They really like that bait on this river.
So this fish helped you right at the end of the day then?
Yeah, it got me up around the 12-pound mark. It was another 2.5 pounder. It's been a bad day when you're towards the end of the day and that thing looks like a big one.
Yeah. What was crazy to me, because I went up shallow on the end of the second day, and you'll see some of that, but like where you just pitched, right there.
Yeah.
There's like no water there. It's like just a little bitty crease that maybe has 1.5 foot of water in it.
Yep.
And there's 18 or 20 different little creases that you could pitch in there. Mm-hmm. Like you could power pull down and spend 20 minutes in that little thing. That was where I kind of ran out of time, was I never got it exactly dialed in when they got up shallow where I needed to be up shallow, especially with all those knees. Did you find, was there any specific area when you were pitching shallow that you seemed to have more fish in?
No, they could be right up against the tree like that, or dude, you could drag it out and go really slow and drag it out, and they might be 5 foot away from the tree. When I was cranking, you would feel the knees. Some of those places have knees that'll be 5, 6 foot away from the tree, and obviously you get bit on those too. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just, the fish are just not right up against the tree. They're 5, 6 feet away from it, and that's where their bed is. It's not really like right next to it, but there could be a lay down piece of wood there. The things that were major players this week that were obvious going into the event was we knew that it was full on spawn. They were hard on wood, any kind of wood, didn't matter if it was lay downs or cypress trees or whatever, they were on wood. And sometimes you have to make multiple casts with the crankbait was a big deal too. So when I would get a good angle on a cypress tree, you had to bump the knees to get bit. And a lot of times they didn't bite on the first cast. Sometimes it was the second, third, fourth cast on a good angle where you were bumping that one of them would smack it. But, I fished a lot of tournaments through the years where guys have won tournaments cranking cypress trees and outperform the guys that are flipping them. We've seen it at Pickwick, it happened there in an Elite Series event that I was there one year. And
Kenta caught some on a big square bill.
Seen it multiple times.
There's square bill was definitely used in the top 10.
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll look over some of my game tape from the James River, see if there's anything that Brad can pick out in there that I could have done differently or better, since this is kind of his forte. This is kind of what you kind of your jam. So it's BTL on a Tuesday. It is the James River recap. We'll be back after this.
I've made my living on the water for over 20 years.
For 14 years.
For over 23 years.
I've worn a bunch of different clothing brands over the years.
Some companies big.
And some companies small.
All of them said they were making clothing for us. But none of them knew us.
None of them were us.
Except for one.
Except for one.
Except one.
AFCO.
AFCO.
AFCO. AFCO.
Fishing isn't part of us. It is us.
The KVD 100 jerkbait. 15 different colors. A perfect combination of roll, wiggle, and flash. Increased castability. 3D eyes. Premium black nickel hooks. KVD. Tie one on. Striking lures.
Are you looking to install your own fishing electronics? Well, the Bass Tank is here to help you. The solution is the Bass Tank Power Harness. It takes the guesswork out of installation. No more voltage issues or interference. Designed by an engineer so that you can get professional results right there in your own garage. Installation done right with the help of the Bass Tank Power Harness. You can feel confident knowing that your installation was done right. The Bass Tank Power Harness. Give us a call or order yours today at thebasstank.com.
Get the best patterns backed by tournament data. Start by finding the best 10% of your lake. Know exactly what to look for and what to throw. After that, just put them in the boat. Try the Deep Dive app today.
Get that beast right there.
Elite Series Pro Daryl Gleason here. My Pro Guide batteries keep me going on those long tournament days and long practice days. Always plenty of juice, never fail. The best part about Pro Guide batteries, it's the people behind the company. They have over 40 years experience in the battery business, keeping all of us fishermen out on the water longer, catching more fish. Check them out at ProGuideBatteries.com.
What's up, Bass Talk Live fans? Brandon Polnick here. And ever since I won a couple Bassmaster Elite Series events on X-Zone Lures, I've been getting a bunch of questions of what makes them so special and different. And really, the truth is, it's in the details. The little details, things like no cheap fillers in their plastic. That gives you more lifelike action, more realistic and vibrant colors. But don't just take my word for it. Go to www.xzonelures.com and check them out for yourself.
Welcome back, BTL, on a Tuesday. Bradley Hallman and myself breaking down the James River Open, where we both finish in the top 100. And statistically, Brad, that was not a disaster. Now, we're not out there to just not have disasters, because I can tell by your reaction you're not thrilled with the 96th place finish. Neither am I, 78th place finish. But right now there's 89 anglers who have fished all three of the Opens. You want to take a gander at how many of them have 3 top 100 finishes? We're 2 of them. I have finishes of 49th, 69th, and 78th, and you have finishes of 57th, 56th, and 96th. Out of the 89 guys that have fished Florida, Tennessee, and Virginia, how many have gone 3 top 100 finishes?
Half of them.
11.
What? Okay. Well, you're not making me feel any better though. Still, so
I'm just saying, 11 out of the 89 have 3 top 100 finishes.
I just really thought going into this one that I had this whole great practice, bad tournament thing ironed out. I did. Like, I saw it coming. Was I worried about it? Yeah. But did I think I could overcome it? And did I think I was going to overcome it? Absolutely. And dude, it just wasn't that week at all.
When I saw you day one, you had 5 or 6 rods fanned out. 4 of them had the same thing on. 2 of the others had the same thing on. You had a little smile on your face. You said, "Morning, Panger," blah, blah, blah. We're talking. I turned to my co-angler. I said, "See that guy?" I said, "He's going to frickin' train wreck him." Yeah. He said, "How do you know?" I said, "He's got a lot of the same thing tied on. I haven't seen him all week. There's not." I said, "Well, there was a spinning rod on your deck. I don't think you used it, though." And I said, "He hasn't called me at all." I said, "And he's in way too good of a mood, and he's not a morning person." And he said, those are all valid reasons. He said, I agree. He goes, I think Brad will catch them today based on what you just said. So I was actually really surprised. But yeah, only 11 out of the 89 have 3 finishes in the top 100. And I went back and I said, well, is that kind of a death sentence when it comes to making the top 3 overall? So I went back to 2021, and out of the top 8 in the point standings, that finished in the top 8 in 2021, because it pretty much, if you notice, everything kind of follows a trend as far as the points it takes and finishes and stuff. Porosnik won the points and he did not have a 100th place finish. But Daisuke, Massa, Sam George, John Garrett, myself, and Tommy Williams, who finished 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, all had finishes in the triple digits. Had one finish. No one had 2. One finish in the triple digits. Massa finished 138th in one of them, and Daisuke started the year off with 153rd.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he backed that up with a 1st and a 6th after it, but it's not a season ender. Now, no one in the top 8 had 2 top 100, had 2 finishes in the 100th. Now, interestingly, Upshaw finished 8th, and he did not have a finish below 100th all year, but he had like 4 that were between 89 and like 96. So he had some that were right there. But you can have a top 100, 150 finish, but what you do is you remove all wiggle room.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like you've got to catch them to average it, because if you have 100, then you know what Daisuke did, he would have blown everyone away. He had 153rd, but then he got 200 points the next one. He got 196 points the next one, and then those 3 average out to like 3 top 40 finishes. If he fills that up with 100, you don't get hardly any points. So I just thought that was interesting, that how difficult it is to just string together 3 top 100 finishes. That really surprised me.
It's a lot of guys. We've talked about this quite a bit over the last couple of years that we've been doing this, and like I said, to catch 12 pounds a day, even on the James, even in the spring, in a Pro-Am style event is not easy, but it's not hard either. But there's just so many guys, like, just 1 pound difference between 24 and 25 is like 20 places. And that's a lot of points, that you're giving up. So every fish matters. Every cast counts. You try to lose as few fish as possible and play the game as high level as you possibly can. It ain't easy, bro. Let's look at some of your film. I'm interested to see what you did in the chick.
All right, so we'll get to mine. I actually did. I was overachieving. I got in the studio at like 5 this morning and did a day 1 and a day 2. So this is day 1. I put a little clip in there of me running down there because I think this is something that. That's it. That's just me running. But I think the run down there in the morning is something in hindsight that a lot of people didn't take into advantage, including me. And I think we see this in practice. You get on the water at 6:30 in the morning, you fish till 8 at night, you put in right there at Rock a Hawk, you get 13 or 14 hours.
Yeah.
And you're fishing hard, and you're 13, 14 hours, and you're getting, say, 2 or 3 really good bites, right? In 13 or 14 hours of fishing. Well, you get off the water and you're like, man, I had a 18-pound bag today. It was really good. I shook off a number. But then you have to realize in the tournament, like I had a 4 o'clock check-in on the first day, and it was windy. We had a 4:10 check-in on the first day, and it was windy. And I was boat 100, so I didn't get down there till almost 8 o'clock. So by the time I'm fishing, it's 8:10. So now I've already lost 2 hours in the morning that I'd been on the water during practice where I'd been getting bites. And then at 2 or at 1:30, actually, I gave myself 2 hours because, it was hucking on day 1 and I had a little decent bag. I was like, man, we better ease our way back. And it took me over an hour to get back with that wind. So I really got to settle down and fish from 8:30 until 1:30. That's 5 hours. That's a third of the time that I spent every day of practice in there. And I was getting 1 or 2 big bites in a 14-hour day of practice. Well, when I'm fishing for a third of that time, I didn't take into account, like, okay, if I'm only averaging 1 good bite every 5 or 6 hours, like, there's a good chance that I won't get a big bite in the 6 hours that I have to fish, and considering that 2 hours of it was on a high kind of slack tide with no current, really you got 3 hours.
Yeah.
Because in the evening you would get something, in the morning you would get something, and you could fish it all the day. So I basically had 3 hours of the incoming tide on that morning to do all my damage. And that becomes painfully aware in the tournament, to where I think you had all these guys, and me included, who are getting bit, and then you take the weather, the boat launch, and the hour-long run, and all of a sudden it's not as productive as you suddenly thought it was. It was a beautiful run, though, down there in the morning. So I started the morning like on my absolute juice. And if you remember last year, my caught a 511 from under a dock, and then I started right on that dock that he caught it on. There's actually a cypress under that stump. But this spot, I did not realize how important this spot would be, Brad. And you will see as you go through the footage how I did not realize how important it was until after the tournament was over. But the first morning, I had, I'm throwing a drop shot here, just a little bitty drop shot, 3/8 ounce weight. I had a limit in like 9 minutes, I think. Obviously, I was not that thrilled with that fish because I just kept it in the water, but just a little guy there to start things out. But if you notice, I power pulled down, and you see these two trees here. So I catch my little fish, and I stand right back up. I'm still power pulled down where I was. Now, pay attention to this. Boom, right there below the boat. And I put 2 fish over 3 in the boat in the first 10 minutes of the morning on day one. Like I thought it was going to be pretty Western out there. Go back there, scoop it up, show the camera. But I mean, like that quality of fish right there was hard to find consistently. Yes. At least for me, it was a 2 3/4 to 3 pound fish.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in good shape there. So now I go to the next dock, and this was my very next fish, like 2 or 3 casts later. Drop shot, hooked up on it, good to go.
Things are going smooth.
Yeah, I'm 20 minutes into the morning. I've got a limit already. I'm like culling with this. Like I said, not an absolute giant, but wait, you'll see when I turn around with this fish, it's one of the ones that you wanted. Mm-hmm. I would have no problem weighing it in. I obviously did weigh it in. Another good one. Yep. I mean, it's good fish.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then
a couple of 6s to go with them.
Right. So here's what you can notice. So look at how colored the water is there, Brad. It looks very stained. That was not like that in practice. So with that wind that came overnight and that morning, that really muddied the water in that area. And I think it kind of affected the bite. We're still on low tide here, but I went ahead and fished it, and I still fish it with the drop shot and caught some more. One of the things that I did last year was I pulled some fish off last year, Brad, like on the drop shot. And I was using my favorite drop shot hook, which is that Shinfukai 2-aught Gamakatsu with the nano coating on it, straight shank finesse.
Okay.
I don't lose fish on that hook, but how often am I drop shotting in 2.5 foot of water for F1 Floridas on a tidal fishery where they can be 6, 7, 8 pounds, and I'm using 14-pound leader on it with a 7.4 medium heavy rod? I lost some last year on it, so I was sitting there and I was going, what kind of hook do I have to get it? And I'm going through my hook box, and I came across that Brent Ayler wacky hook that he based off of the Gamakatsu fly hook. It's a little bit heavier gauge, little bit shorter shank, nano coated, but you can't bend it out. So the night before the tournament, I went to Lowe's and I bought the shrink wrap tubing and some glue, and I had 2 packs of the 1-aughts with no weed guard on it, and I built myself a straight shank drop shot hook with those hooks.
Very nice.
Never lost a fish in the tournament on it. And I point that out because if you watch me set the hook here, I reel into them, right? I don't set the hook. But I've got 14-pound shooter to 16-pound SX1. I bumped everything up because I knew how critical a big fish would be. Look at all this stuff here, and I'm going to lay the lumber on them on a drop shot. See how I hammered them on the drop shot?
Yep.
I never hammer them on the drop shot like that. And I was very pleased with that decision that every decent fish that bit, I was able to just winch it into the boat.
You're right. I sit and watch your stuff, and I'm like, the wind's blowing there. Why not try a chatterbait, a square bill, a spinnerbait after you throw your...
Well, that's a good question, because I catch one on that tree, and I said, maybe a little 5/16 ounce spinnerbait would get the job done. So I throw a spinnerbait for probably an hour on the first day. You know, it looks good, doesn't it?
Yeah, with the wind blowing.
Little spinnerbait.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, 4 or 5 casts in, I get drilled. And I catch 3 or 4 on a spinnerbait, and they're all keepers, and they're all the same size as the one I'm catching on the drop shots.
I understand.
There's
just a lot of fish in that place.
You know, they're just pounding a quarter rats like that. I did make a good decision here. I kept going back to this stretch. Like, I knew this stretch had a lot of fish on it, but I think it got pressured, and I did not expect it to get that much pressure. But I did make a pass on that. There you can see, like, I mean, that's a spinning rod, and I'm giving it the coals on it. Like, look how much that rod's bent. I had no qualms about retying a 14-pound leader. I mean, I was flipping it. It wasn't a finesse drop shot deal. This was one of my good ones. Not a great one, but, you know, another good fish.
Right.
And I ended up, here you can see that drop shot hook. Look where that drop shot hook was hooked. Every single one of them. Right in the top, and watch. Boom. See it pop out like that?
Mm-hmm.
Those things were pegged. That is the hook for that I made. And then I had to leave early.
It was windy.
Yeah. And that was the entire boat ride back. There were like 5 or 6 sections like that.
Is that in the Chick, or is that in the James?
That is right outside the mouth of the Chick in the James. And it was like that for 10 miles, and then it'd be calm, and then it'd be like that for 10 miles again, and made it in and had 12.9.
Stellar day.
Yeah.
Dude, when we went out, I was like, 15 pounds could be 50th place, as good as the fishing had been on that place. So anything shy of 15 pounds, I knew was not going to be par.
But it was, I mean, pretty obvious. I kind of did what I did last year, but I went into day 2, Brad, and I thought, well, there weren't many boats in my stretch. There weren't a lot of boats that made that run. I'm going to massacre them on day 2. It's going to be calm. There's going to be a little bit of a cold front. I don't think a lot of those guys who didn't catch them down there are going to make that run back, and I'll be able to really milk it and have 15, 16, 17 pounds on day 2 and be right back in the hunt, right?
Right.
And then on day 2, we're greeted with the fog delay.
Saw that one coming. I was like almost ready to stay in bed that morning. I actually told my co-angler that, it'd be wise to sleep in, but sure enough, if we do, they won't have a fog delay. But I didn't do my tackle the night before because I expected this to happen.
I did the exact same thing. I sat there and I did my tackle, and Chris just asked, did you try a Bubba shot on casting gear, Matt? And if you see right here, that would be a Bubba shot on casting gear, 22-pound shooter, 4-aught Gamakatsu flipping hook, little 4-inch worm on it, and a 3/8 ounce drop shot. And I put that on that 610 Denali spinnerbait rod because I was like, man, I can get up in there and make quick little pitches all around those cypress and then just really pour the coals on them if I get around it. Had not tied it on and not fished it. Had never really fished a Bubba shot. Part of the reason I tied it on, I knew it would work just because of the color of the water down there, and then also what Jared Littner was doing in the BPT earlier this year in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
Made me tie the Bubba shot on. So let's see. Get down to the spot. First thing in the morning. First fish of the morning. Isolated tree, little cypress. I'd had one. I'd shaken some off. Didn't catch one on day 1. And the first one of the morning is a 3-pounder.
It's a mimic the copy of the day before.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you started off day 2 like I did, thinking, all right, today's
hooked him right in the top of the lip. Good fish in the box. No problems. This was an interesting one. I'm messing with my live wells, and all of a sudden I have one on. So, I fought him. He ended up making it. I'm like back here. I'm like totally out of the screen. Their odds laid there, and I'm like, oh, I got one. And that sucker just picked it up and swam out with it. So I'm like, bonus fish. Got a 3-pounder. He was a little guy, but I mean, he still helped the cause. And then this is where I got a little bit spun out. So there were, on that row of docks, there were like 8 or 10 boats, right? Yeah. There had been like 2 there before. So I run across to another stretch, and then if you see this boat right here that I'm circling, well, that's Daryl Gleason, and he had 1610 the day before. Yep. And I rolled over to this, and he was tucked behind a cypress and didn't see him. So now he's 75 yards from me, headed towards me. I'm headed towards him. I'm not going to mess with him. I can't pull up on his stretch, right? So I'm sitting there to my co-angler going, boy, there's a lot more boats here than there were. And yeah. I'm stressing out a little bit. Didn't get any bites there. So what do? I go back to the same stretch that I started on the day before. There's a dock right here that I caught my first keeper off of. And you remember what happened right here the day before, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm throwing the wacky worm. And watch, I notice this. I keep my boat this time way on this side of it. I see that little deal there, so I pick up the drop shot that I caught it on the day before. Power pole down. Make my little pitch, just like I had done before. Catch me another 3-pounder.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is something that I realized in practice that some of the locals are going to have a leg up on. So if you live there, there are cypress trees or lay down stretches that historically you have caught big fish on. And you can really soak a bait around those knowing that you've got a high potential of catching a big one and potentially multiple big ones. You know, and like I said, there's so many of those 5 to 6 pounders in this river. There's a bunch. If you've got your bait in front of one all the time, you know, your odds are going to be better. It's hard to, you know, come in here and know that tree. But like you said, last year, that same area gave you, even though you didn't catch it, your co-angler did, quality fish. I promise you that every year there's big ones right there spawning. There's something special about that area.
Do you think there was one like in the exact spot there last year? Probably like if so. I had made that exact cast on the exact same spot with the exact same bait at the exact same time in last year's tournament, do you think I'd have caught a 3-pounder?
I don't know if it'd been a 3, but you probably would have caught a fish. Yes.
You think so?
There's something there, man.
Well, let's go back to 2021. Here we are in April of 2021. Here's the dock. Here's the tree. Here's the deal right there. I'm throwing the drop shot. I'm doing the exact same thing. Make the exact same pitch. Boat drifts. I look. I pop it once. Shake, shake, shake. There's another 3-pounder on that exact same cast last year on the exact same bait. Almost a year plus to the day. And that was my second biggest fish the second day last year. And the only reason I started and went in there was because I went back and watched my footage from last year.
That's incredible.
Look at that.
Yeah, there's something there.
Look at that one. There's a quality one. So that was 2021.
You just need some places with 6-pounders on it instead of 3s.
You know, there's 2022, year apart. Remember where I started the first day, Brad?
Yes.
Caught one off of that tree the very first day. Caught one over here.
Yep.
So I caught 2 3-pounders, a keeper there. I caught 3 of my 10 fish that I weighed in. 3 of my 4 biggest came off of that exact same little pitch. Is that not cool?
Yeah.
That got me all geeked out. It was like that's where game footage actually pays off.
Yeah, being able to go back and watch what you've done the year before.
And here's why I watch this. So here's why. Let's go to 2021. And I don't know if this is important or not. So 2021, I had 10-pound test. I had that little 2-aught drop shot hook, and I had 12-pound braid. Watch when I set the hook on this one. It's kind of a goat rope. He's right there, and watch. I'm like, I can't pull him out. You see what I mean? I'm having to let him fight, and I'm having to run back, and I'm having to mess with him around those poles. It was dangerous. I remembered how many of that there was. So watch the hook set from 2021. It was like, watch, I'll reel into it. See, I just reel into it. Notice that? Mm-hmm. And so watch what I did on not only did I boat flip it, but watch this year. There's the bite. Watch the hook set this year. Everything's beefed up. Boom. I hammer them. I get them away from the pilings. Now he's mine.
You have any problem with barnacles down there? I mean,
nope.
You're close enough. There's
now he's mine, and I boat flipped him. Way better than what I had to do last year for it.
Yeah, difference in hook and difference in just the whole setup.
I literally, and I say that, it says, I think you are too close. Maybe you need to get further. I could not get any further away because see how close the docks are together? Mm-hmm. I could not turn my boat around in that. And the way that tree was located in the dock, you could not get to the tree unless you could pitch horizontally to it. So I would drift in there without hitting the trolling motor. But anyway, that was my highlight of the deal. And then I ended up going into a bay. And here you see I picked up the bait caster. I had an hour left. Had not done this, had not been in this bay. Thought the water was warming up. My co-angler who I was with is kind of from there. He said, yeah, I've caught some in this bay before. And I catch like 20 in like a foot of water, flipping just the power shot. And it felt good to just whack on them.
The power shot, you're whacking on them. What size line you got on that?
22. I was not messing around. And catch them all down this bank. And then at the end of the day, I said, and this is what you went back to, where the isolated trees, a little bit deeper water, seem to have more fish on them.
Bigger fish, not more, bigger fish.
Bigger fish. So I had like 5 minutes left on my day before I ran back for an hour, right? Mm-hmm. 5 minutes left. I've got about 9.5 pounds in the boat with 2 3s and another good one. Like I have 3 good ones. I still only have like 9 pounds. My others are like pound 7s, pound 8s that I've culled up from ones. And this was one of my last flips of the day. And it turns out to be about a 3 3/4.
Mm-hmm. That helped a lot. I like blowing them over the side. That looks a lot better than going down and spinning a rod and having to.
Yeah. And then I fished the rest of those trees, caught one more small one, pushing it, trying to come back in, and no dice. So I ended up with 12-11 on the second day. Did not break any off. I lost a couple, but I think they were small ones. I made good decisions. I, too, just never got a big bite. Never got a big bite, Brad.
Yeah, that's the story of my week. Never had a big bite. And I don't know. I mean, you and I were fishing totally different as far as styles of baits and stuff. So I was fishing much bigger, larger profile, fast react. And I flipped the jig around a lot too and just never got a big bite.
Everyone's saying, I'm not even sure what a donkey rig is. Oh, someone said a double fluke rig. We're not allowed to fish that. Can't fish the donkey rig in the opens either. Long pauses, Clay saying long pauses on the initial drop and not throwing where the beds are key to getting big bites. The big ones sit off and are super slow to bite. I would absolutely drag the drop shot or the wacky worm around that cypress 365 off of the bed, knowing based on what we saw with your video on how far those knees go out, knowing that a lot of those bites would seemingly come in nowhere.
Yeah.
When there was tide, they got sucked up more.
Clay's right. Some of the big fish, and I knew this is how it was going to go down, which is what I was trying to avoid with the crankbait, but the guys that Brian Post caught them really well out of one of my areas, and he was doing nothing but wacky rigging and just going really, really, really slow with a wacky rigged worm out on those isolated cypress trees like we just looked at. And it paid off for him. You know, that's definitely a way to get bigger bites. Now, with that being said, I went to another area and spent the majority of the morning doing that. And it did not pay off. So it's also a good way to waste a hell of a lot of time if you don't have it dialed into exactly where they're sitting.
It's a really weird tournament because, I mean, you can say, oh, well, I was one bite away. Well, so was everyone else. And the guys who figured it out got that one bite. Was that because they did something different? Was that because they got lucky? I've gotten that one bite before.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing that would have been great information. You want to know how to fish that thing? You guys fish around there. I'll give you the lowdown. Here's the deal. Go to the pits at low tide with the sun up and find the ones that you're looking for and then go back and catch them. There's multiple guys in the top 10 that's where that came from.
Really?
Day one, day two. Absolutely.
Sight
110% sight fished them. And then if the tide's off and you're not going to hit the right tide, just mark them well enough that you're dragging your bait in front of what you know are 4 or 5.
Did you ever see one on a bed?
The times that I
never
spent
did.
the pits, the times that I was in the pits, because the pits are generally clear, and there's a lot of pits on this lake or on this river. The tide was high, and I just never saw one. I never saw a fish on the bed the entire time I was there. Now, other guys game plan for this that had a heads up, and then others were just fortunate enough to be in the right time at the right place the first morning of the tournament and saw them. So, but that was a big player this week, no doubt.
Yeah, I did. I guess I exposed one dock on all of the Chickahominy. So that dock is probably toasted now.
You can't see those females on beds at high tide. You can't. You know, the beds are just too deep. You've got to be able to maximize your time. You know, and this goes back to tidal river fishing, and it's not just sight fishing. I mean, it's like this all the time. You can be in the right area and never get a bite if it's the wrong tide. And those are the things that make it more complicated than just a regular river system or a lake or reservoir, is the timing issue. And like I say, I mean, you can literally be on the best spot on the entire river and not know it if you're there at the wrong tide.
Yeah, and if you want to catch 9, you can just go back and watch my footage. You will catch 9 pounds there every single day. From probably April through June. So, hey, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, we're going to wrap up the James River, look ahead to Ross Barnett. It's a BTL on a Tuesday. We'll be back after this.
Vibrating jigs are a great choice for any time of year, and the Kamikaze Swim-On is a perfect match for any vibrating jig. 2 sizes and the unique tail design gives it a bait fish profile and a great swimming action for realism. There are 17 colors. See them all at bigbitebaits.com.
The Spro Little John crankbait has been around for almost 15 years, and it is one of my go-to crankbaits whenever I need a fish in the boat, so you can never have enough new colors. That's why Spro's coming out with a handful of new colors, including Pearl Shad, which has this bleached out white look, but it's got this pearlescent, really, really pretty. We've got Copper Shad, which looks amazing in the water. It's got that purple flake on the back, really, really pops in the water. And then if you want some real pop, we've got Sparkle Shad, nothing but sparkles all over this thing. And then last but not least, we've got the matte Sexy Shad, just a really different looking color for a crankbait. So you want to give them a little different look, that matte Sexy Shad is definitely the one to go with. All these colors are available in the original Little John and the MD.
Combining one of the most popular hook styles with Gamakatsu's beefier Superline offering, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend delivers the strength necessary to target big fish in heavy cover. Well suited for braided line and heavier fluorocarbon, the Gamakatsu Superline Offset Round Bend is built using stronger Superline wire that allows anglers to easily fish a finesse worm around heavy cover. The round bend offers a larger bite area, perfect for any worm presentation, while increasing your hookup ratios. The newly enhanced Z-Bend holds your plastics on the hook longer, reducing the number of pull-offs and reducing damage to plastics. Available in 2/0, 3/0, 4/0, and 5/0, this is the most durable worm hook, designed for heavier lines that hold your bait on longer.
Preparation is key to success. And that preparation starts well before you ever hit the water. You're only as strong as your connection to the fish, and your line is that critical connection. Confidence in your line every minute of every day on the water is a necessity, and failure, it's not an option. Sunline makes the fluorocarbon, nylon, and braided lines to give you the strength to guarantee your confidence.
The new Android series is the peak of the Denali lineup and offers the ultimate Denali experience. The Android series features 36-ton multi-directional graphite combined with interlock blank technology for added strength. Each rod is outfitted with Royal titanium guides that will not fail. The blank is fitted into an easy-touch, soft-feel EVA foam grip with exposed blank reel seat. This all allows the Android to transmit every movement of your bait and even the most subtle bites. The Android series is the finest rod Denali has ever made and offers an angler the ultimate fishing experience with a limited lifetime warranty. See the full lineup of Android rods at denalirods.com.
Welcome back, BTL, on a Tuesday. Mentioned before that Bradley and I will be at the Bassmaster Central Open, first Central Open of the year, next week on Ross Barnett in Mississippi. And that last ad there always cracks me up from Denali with the multi-directional 36, and I'm like, no one knows what the heck that means. So what I did was I filmed a show with Brian Head, who runs Denali Fishing. We had him on and asked him questions about what all that stuff means for an hour. So that will run next week while I'm at Ross Barnett, but a very educational show about rods, what IM6, what IM8 means, different handles, different blanks, how the blanks are designed, what the guides are, what makes a rod expensive, what makes a rod break when it shouldn't, how to maintain your rods. It's just a full-on show of rods. We had a pretty sketchy segment in there where we talked about cork for 5 minutes, but we got through that one. And looking forward to running that one next week, Brad.
You guys know, he knows so much about rods, dude. It's insane. It just, I don't know what that is that he's talking about in that commercial. What is that exactly?
It has to do with how the graphite is like pressed and woven, and how many like strands and stuff are in it that make it stronger, so you can use it. You can use like, it's like thinner, denser and more sensitive, and therefore, but it's also more expensive and stuff. And then you put like the titanium guides in. It's all about like, feel. We went over the difference between action and power.
Yeah.
We went over the difference between the split grips and a lot about reel seats, about hand and palm contact on blank, about how the blanks are designed like with the rod, and what happens like, if you break off the first 2 inches of your rod and then decide to just put a tip back on it.
Yep.
How it changes the entire rod.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, if you're into that kind of dorky stuff, it's going to be a really good one. You'll have your batteries dialed in and you'll have your rods dialed in after our educational shows, and your electronics with the guys from the Bass Tank. But wrap up the James. Grade yourself. Give yourself a grade, A through F. We need to start doing this after every one. Let's do it. Let's go back and grade it. So Florida, grade yourself A through F.
Florida, man, I give myself probably a B minus or a C. I mean, I fished pretty decently. I would say I give myself a C at Florida. I had a horrendous practice. I fished the entire tournament on water I'd never seen and just tried to make some things happen, and came out a few, like a pound less than a check. So Florida was all right. Tennessee was probably even better. I had one good day of practice in Tennessee, but Tennessee is a highland impoundment, and I just fished 100% conditions. If the wind was blowing on one side of the lake, that's the side I went and got on, and I felt like that I did all right there. That was the shocker that everybody caught them as good as they did, because, I think I got 15 pound a day, and it just wasn't enough. But then coming into this one, this is the one that I really fished poorly. Really good practice, terrible tournament. Just did not fish well. I wish I would have fished freer. You get into areas and you're like, well, I've been bit here, I've been bit here, I've been bit here. You've got more areas to fish than you've got time to fish, which I think you kind of covered that when you're talking about having 14-hour practice days and then 5 hours to fish that area. So it tends to lock you down more. Well, I want to go look at this, I want to go look at that, instead of just fishing freely with what's in front of you. Just really struggled at the James, and the boat pressure by day 2 on the James really takes its toll, and that's obvious. And it's hard to get away from, and it's hard to get out of your head too. I mean, it's hard to fish confidently when you know that those two boats that are sitting over there have been sitting over there for 2 damn days, going around and around a circle around that group of laydowns and cypress trees, and it's just aggravating.
So what letter for the James?
F.
Okay. I'm going to go B+ in Florida. I survived. I came into Florida the second time ever with a top 50 after finishing 111th last year in it. And I put the finesse stuff up, picked up the heavy 8-foot flipping stick, and caught a 7-pounder to save my tournament. That's how Florida's supposed to be done. No, I'm giving myself a B+ for Florida. You can't give yourself an A when you don't walk away with anything. B+ though, for me, even though it was a 49th, it was a bad tournament, but I'll take it. Cherokee, I'm going to give myself a C+. I wasn't on anything. I grinded it out. I realized I wasn't on anything. It would have been a B, but I missed the bite that I should have figured out on day 2 during the tournament.
That's good.
I should have been able to figure that bite out during the tournament because it was there and it was obvious, and I did not figure it out. I was very close to it. I was on the right type of stuff. I was 80% of the way there instead of 100% of the way there. And then on the James, I'm going to give myself a C on the James. I liked my game plan. I liked how I executed it. I think I was around the fish to cash a check. Like I said, 1 4-pounder, and it goes from a 78th to a 40th, and I give myself a B and say, see, the dink and dunk works. But yeah. I didn't get that bite, and I made some bad time calculations and based a lot on practice as opposed to the 5 or 6 hours that I got to fish each day. So a C. So neither of us have had an A.
Yeah.
That dog loves you.
This dog is mentally disturbed. I will pet it, and then when the second I get up to walk out of here, she'll lay on the floor like somebody's about to kick her. We've had her for about a year. She was a stray that wandered up on the porch. Somebody abused her at some point in her life, and so trying to get her head right. But, dude, she just, like right now, she's like all about it. And then as soon as I stand up, she's going to lay on the floor, and all I'm doing is walking out of the office, and she's going to lay there in a ball like somebody's about to kick her. And I don't get it. But she sleeps with Abigail, the 6-year-old, every night, and it's kind of her little dog. So
yeah, it's like a therapy dog for you right now after talking about the James.
Yeah,
pointed out Brad's dog is helping him get past that F on the James.
Yeah,
you could take him into Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
With a little vest on her.
James was hard on me, dude. I don't like those really good practices, and they turn into that. And I know what causes it. And like I say, I thought I could avoid it this week, and I really thought I was on enough that it wouldn't matter. But I sure didn't get the bites that I needed, and it was pretty big letdown.
Yeah. No, I agree, Clay. And you can't say you had an A if you didn't fish day 3. No, I disagree. I think there's some stuff that you could do to where if you turn a horrible tournament into a good result, I would definitely give myself an A for a 30th or 40th place finish if I knew I maximized what I was on. I think you can fish an A and not finish in the top 30. I really do.
Yeah. I don't know about, putting a letter grade on it, but I did feel like I fished a really good tournament in Tennessee. The weights were just really up there, but my decision making and the things that I did in Tennessee, I felt like were really strong.
Yeah, you were pumped about that.
Yeah, I felt good about it. Just didn't catch what I needed.
And it's a whole different story for you too if that 4-pounder that's hooked on top of the head comes in the boat, because then you're right there in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, it's a couple pounds, but hey, you don't. None of us plan to land every single fish that we hook. You
know what? Drew Smith told me that first show that I ever did at we were doing it. Was it KREF? The Bass Zone.
Yeah, on the radio.
I had taken over. I just started working for Mark, and he's like, hey, go do this. We were interviewing people, and I was talking about some tournament, and if this guy had landed that, he would have won. And we're live on air. We're live. And Drew goes, yeah, Matt, and if my aunt had nuts, she'd be my uncle.
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm like 23 years old, and I lost it. I had to leave the studio during a live radio show on KREF because I got the giggles over that. But it's stuck with me. I mean, there are no ifs, ands, or buts in it. You either do it or you don't. And when you do it, you look at the guys who finished 60 and 70th and said, oh, you didn't figure it out. Should have landed your fish. Should have had better game plan. And when you're 60 and 70, you can't look at 40 and go, well, I was right there if it wasn't for it. No, you weren't. You're 30, 40 places back.
Mm-hmm.
They kicked your butt, even if it was a pound, even if it was a bite. They had the game plan and put that bite in the boat, so they obviously fished better than you in that tournament.
Yep. No, I mean, I plan on losing fish. You know, I mean, I'm not that upset about losing 1 and 2 days. I mean, it's going to happen, dude. You've got to generate more bites.
Yep.
That's what it boils down to. You have to be able to generate more bites.
Ross Barnett, initial thoughts? It's not going to be a fun one. I don't think it'll be fun. It's going to be a mental grind.
Yeah, it's small. Spawn's going to be on there too. So, you know, I don't know exactly how it's going to go down. It's not a clear lake, so there'll be some sight fishing, but not a lot. There'll probably be 20 boats parked on each one that you can see. I don't know what to expect. You know, are we going to see the shad spawn already? You know, that's something I'm thinking about. I don't know. I'm going to go down there and have a good time and try to maximize my time and fish a better tournament than what I fished the last 2 or 3.
Who was it we just had on who said, man, I seem to catch them a lot better when I'm having fun?
I don't know anyone that doesn't say that.
I think it was Jason. Jason said that.
Yeah.
He said when it's fun, it's a lot easier.
Well, that's a lot more fun when you're catching them too. That guy, man, I'm telling you, he's red hot.
He is. I actually vividly remember telling my co-angler at the James, this is not fun.
Well, in all fairness, even Jason will tell you that the 225 boat field opens are not fun. I think that we all kind of feel that way. So 3rd day, top 10, yeah, fun. But Sukkot doesn't seem to be minding them right now. What has he made? 3 top 10s out of 4 that he's fished so far?
Yeah,
so
he just said when he fished
John's
on Grand, he made a top 10, and it was so much fun.
Yeah.
He decided, well, let's just fish them all next year and see what happens.
Yeah. And he just top 10s every week. So,
yeah, it's the Okie show this week. I had Jason and John on yesterday.
Really?
I got you on today.
Well, those guys are really on it, on their game right now. That's for sure. I didn't realize you had both them on. I'll have to go back and listen, see what all those two have to say.
It was a good show.
Yeah.
It was a really good show. I said, Jason, are you more proud of all the records you're setting on the water, or the record that you're the most you've been on BTL 3 times already this year? You're the most often recorded guest on BTL. He said that he was pretty dang proud of that.
Yeah, I think the text message I sent him after he won Chick was something to the effect of, all right, dude, congratulations, but like I'm ready for you to congratulate me.
He loves responding
with
with just the thumbs up. He always responds with just thumbs up. Can you come on BTL? Thumbs up. A lot of thumbs up in the Jason Christie camp this year. It's over 500,000. I think it's right around 500,000.
Not a man of many words.
Not a man of many words. All right, we will be back with another recap of Ross Barnett following hopefully 2 A's in the column, some checks, some top 10s, and we'll have a really positive talk. We'll be back tomorrow. Really good show tomorrow. Rick Harris, winner of the Toyota Series on Texoma, wins the Toyota Series a week after he puts his guide client on a 14-pounder.
Yes.
And then he goes on the water the next day after he wins the Toyota Series, and he goes 4 consecutive days of putting his clients on their PBs, and they're all double digits.
Rick's story is a great story too. You guys don't want to miss it.
He's one of the good dudes.
Yeah, he is. We're all fans of Rick Harris, and the way that he wins this tournament is the definition of fighting to the last cast. I'll say that.
All right, this has been BTL on a Tuesday. We'll see you guys later.
Thumbs up.